Clamp that in the handy dandy little pipe jaws on the bottom of this Craftsman vise, and away we go. This kind of plumbing is going out of style. Everybody's going with Home Depot clamp-on hose fittings. Not a big fan of that. One of the problems with copper tubing is it does have solder in it. And solder can have lead. And people are concerned, rightfully so, about lead contamination in their water. Nobody wants to have their kids drink contaminated water. And they don't want to drink it themselves either. So to solve that problem, they've come up with silver bearing solder. And the silver bearing solder doesn't have any lead in it. And as far as we know, silver doesn't cause any problems. I'm going to be soldering this together with silver-based solder, but that's only come about in the last 20 years that people really got concerned about it. Probably have to look that up. Don't quote me on the dates because I don't really know. I'm reaming out the end of the copper tubing. Now I'm going to take a bit of sandpaper and I'm going to shine up the end of the copper. I want to have a nice and shiny copper. I want to have that solder bond to it quick. So now we got the two pipes prepped for solder. This is Aquabond lead-free solid wire solder. More expensive because it has silver in it instead of lead, but it doesn't have the problems that. And this is OD lead-free tinning flux, so it doesn't have any lead in it either. Not that tinning flux ever did have lead in it that I know of, but they're making sure that you know it's okay to use with lead-free solder. What I'm looking to do is I want to just spread that flux around the fitting and inside this fitting. Now, I didn't show you. Even though this is a brand new copper fitting, I took the sandpaper and cleaned up the inside of it too, because there's always a little oxidation in there. And I slipped the two together, get out the propane torch. I've got a little bit of solder sticking out there, And I'm going to put something down so that I can catch any drips. Because the flux is going to melt and it's going to drip out of there, and I don't want to have it drop on the floor or onto my vise. When you're sweat soldering, the solder is going to be drawn to the heat. So I want to heat this fitting and the tube, but more of the fitting than the tube. So I'm going to warm up the whole thing, get the flux to melt, and then I'm going to start heating on the fitting so that the heat is in the fitting and it draws the solder to it. Doesn't take much solder, because all I have to do is fill up the little thin gap in between the pipe and the fitting. Now I'm going to let that cool. Pipe's cooled off enough to touch it. You can see that it's drawn the solder in all the way around and on the inside too. Because this is acid paste flux, I'm going to go up and wash this off in the sink. I'm going to strip off the old Teflon, otherwise it'll get in there and wedge the joint open. Just need a thin layer of Teflon in there. Enough to fill in the gaps between the two pipe threads and make up for the inaccuracies. When you put on Teflon tape, you want to have the end pointing away from the way the line is threaded. No more than a couple of wraps. Just has to be enough to go in there and fill in the gaps between the two threads. And you want to make sure and use the flats. If you grab a hold of the pipe with a pipe wrench, copper tubing will just fold up. Now when they made this valve, they made life easy for me. They put a mark on there that says down. Then I'm going to highlight that mark and put a mark on the tube so I can see it quite easily. That way, won't be any question about whether the pipe is in the right direction or not. Once again, a couple of wraps. And this stuff is really thin. It molds right into that thread. I want to make sure I don't have any Teflon tape on the inside of the pipe, because it'll go out and possibly clog up the valves. So I'm ready to go out and put this through the wall. Make sure I got my mark in the right spot. Still good. Fittings in place, everything's doped up, no leaks, got her done. Well, having the frost-free outlet done, that's the last of the outside projects that I had planned. Now there may be other things that show up. Life is the way it is. Installing a frost-free faucet on the outside of the house was the last project that I had lined up for outside this year. It's getting cold enough that things are going to get a little tougher to get done. I still got work to do in the blacksmith shop and things to take care of out there, and I'll be working in the garage from time to time. But most of the outside stuff is done. Now I get to come down in the basement and play with the tools. If you guys have any suggestions for videos or questions that you'd like answered, and you've been really good about giving them to me so far, just drop a note in the comments below. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.